Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2022 horror film, The Nameless Days, a film that is written and directed by Andrew Meckham and Matthew Whedon. It stars Ali Loenides, Charles Halford, Trey Warner and Alejandro Acara. Now the film essentially focuses on a family that lives close to the crossing in regards to the Mexican border. They live on the US side. There are a lot of immigrants that try and cross over, and these immigrants have crossed paths with an ancient spirit that reappears every 20 years, and it's got a 5-day window, i.e. the Nameless Days, where it can essentially prey upon children or babies, or anything like that. It then falls to this young girl and her father to try and protect these two immigrants in particular, one of them whom is heavily pregnant. Right, what are my thoughts on The Nameless Days? Well, at first glance, this is a fairly generic and standard horror film. It obviously is taking from what's come before, and I'm talking about the La Llorona film and things like that. It feels similar in that structure, and certainly in regards to the creature that we're dealing with here, the spirit. Preys on children and all this kind of stuff, and it's like a Hispanic type demonic spirit. So it feels very much in that kind of world, if you like. So it's quite easy to certainly initially dismiss here. And while I do think they make quite a few missteps here with this film, in regards to eventually its structure, it does eventually just evolve into, almost a chase film, trying to get away from this evil spirit type thing. It does show some early promise. I do think here what the film does get right is it actually has, not all of them, but it has some reasonably fleshed out characters and who feel real, like real people. And I'm talking about Ali Loenides' character Nicole and her father Charles Halford, Charlie. They felt like they were a real father and daughter. They felt like they had this real relationship. They were having real life problems. And ways of communicating with each other and all this kind of stuff. And they actually took the time to establish this relationship so that you had these characters that you actually had, some form of connection with while you're watching this film. And you can't always say that about many, certainly low-budget horror films, which just certainly falls into the bracket of. It's not micro-budget or anything like that. It's got decent production values. It's actually got some good direction as well. It's got some good ideas going on in it. But, yeah, a lot of low-budget films, whatever it may be, forget about good characters first. And I do think certainly these two stand out. There are other characters in the film that aren't required other than for exposition. There's another character called Victor, played by Trey Warner, who essentially kind of runs a podcast, and he's a friend of the father, if you like. He's only really there because he knows somebody who knows about this demonic spirit sort of thing. So it's one of those lazy exposition drops, rather than actually giving us more creative ways of understanding this spirit and its motivations and all this kind of stuff. We get an exposition drop from this guy who knows all about this spirit and what it means and why it's here and so on and so forth. It's quite lazy in that sense. So in some sense, the writing's decent, and in another sense, it's quite lazy at the same time. And strangely as well, when you consider that this film is heavily focused on immigrants and things like that, and we get these two immigrants in particular, I think the brother and sister, and the sister's heavily pregnant, so she's like a prime target for this spirit. They aren't nearly fleshed out enough for me, so you don't necessarily care about them in certainly in the same way as you do the father and the daughter. So it's a bit unbalanced as well in that sense. I do think the film has a couple of other strengths as well. I think the effects for this spirit, creature, demonic thing, whatever you want to call it, were pretty decent. It kind of crawls around in the shadows for the most part, but when you do see it, it looks reasonably effective. So that kind of worked, and they don't overshow it either. I thought the soundtrack as well was pretty good. It did add to the film sometimes. Again, low-budget films, they forget about the small things that can certainly elevate a film, and the soundtrack's certainly one of them as well, and the soundtrack certainly was pretty decent here. So what we get here is, yeah, it's a fairly unbalanced film, but I did appreciate the effort they tried to put in regards to the setup and the introduction of some of these characters, the fact that they felt like real people. And then, unfortunately, it fails to fully introduce the other characters, and certainly this demonic entity sort of thing, or this spirit. We didn't learn an awful lot about it other than like these fairly quick exposition dumps and all this kind of stuff. And like I say, by the end of the film, it does kind of just be reduced down to like a chase film, you know, and who's going to live and who's going to survive, and it becomes fairly predictable. Then the last 30 minutes, 25 minutes of the film kind of falls into typical horror fare that, for me, certainly didn't deliver. It was, but it was certainly fairly watchable. This, you know, as you know, guys, I watch a lot of low budget stuff here on this channel, and some of it can be a real chore to get through. And I was certainly engaged for the most part with this film. It had my attention for the most part. It just lacked that edge, really, to kind of elevate it beyond what it actually was, which is a fairly bang average horror film, which is why I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. So let me know what you guys think if you've seen this film, and of course I'll be back on the channel with loads more reviews and content very, very soon.